Lack it, Obster.
Here we are. Here we are. So you chose Mark 4 for us to play with today. What I'm really curious about is, as you read Mark 4:39 to 40, as a businessman, it says two things to me. One is quiet, be still. That jumps out. And then I think about hustle culture and pushing it and all hours and pumping it and Grant Cardone and that. And that's the opposite, right? There's like a north and a south pole that jumps out. And then it says, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And fear dictates so much of what people do. And for some people, it's maybe a useful motivator. And for other people, it's a limiting factor. So when you think about business and you think about Mark, what got you to bring this to?
So, Rob, that is a way for me of not being afraid to step out in faith. There's been a lot of things and something that I've shared with you as well that I'm literally going to have to do and step out in faith and not be afraid to do. And sometimes our level of tiredness overcrowd us so much that we are afraid to step out into the waters and to step out and do what God wants us to do. Because I've heard the saying once, and it's so true. Fatigue makes a fool out of us sometimes. And I think it is so important to find rest in God, to find rest in ourselves, to find rest in what we do, to be able to execute those areas that we possibly might be afraid of very well. Because I think when you take that story, I'm thinking of what happened prior to that, where Jesus was busy preaching the whole day and he decided to nap. He decided to sleep, right? And of course, the disciples, they were still up and about, most probably, yes, steering the ship. But because they were so tired, they couldn't concentrate on the fact that, man, we've seen this man do miracles over and over and over again. Why were we being afraid now? I mean, of course he's going to get us through this. I literally think had they most probably also chosen to sleep, they would have slept through the storm. I literally think they would have slept through the storm, but they were up from a long day that they had with Jesus. They were still up. And I think sometimes it just literally reminds us that we need to work from a place of rest to basically cut out the being tired, to cut out the being fearful, and to cut out all of the negative stuff that might build up because just the fact that we're fatigued.
I wonder whether people actually know how to rest. And whether people are afraid of resting, there's a thought, or feel guilt because they rest. And yet Sunday is the day of rest. It is the seventh day. It is there for a reason. And part of me, when I look at people, and I'm just going to be honest, I'm sorry if this upsets anybody, but I look at entrepreneurs and business owners who've still got the energy to go party on Friday and Saturday nights. And the impact of their weekend, right, they just can't get enough rest on a Sunday because of the impact of Friday and Saturday night. They've still got $1 million, $billion aspirations, dreams and goals. And yet when I actually look about how they're choosing to live their life, they are clearly identifying a lack of understanding of what rest is and how to rest and how to get the best out of their body. And then when it does come to rest, many people claim to be an extrovert. But by the way, you won't find introvert or extrovert in the Bible. They're actually 20th century pseudo-psychology. It's not proven, not real, not accurate, not mentioned biblically, not mentioned by any of the Stoics or anybody before that. You go back to the ancient Greeks, all of this pseudo-psychology we've got. I'm an extrovert, so I have to go out and do this, that, and the other. And what else would I do on Sunday afternoons? Is all people creating a narrative to say, I actually am happy to stay broke. I'm actually happy not to prosper. I'm actually scared of success, because the reality is that success in any journey is lonely. You can't be ultra successful at anything in a crowd. It's not possible. It doesn't matter whether you want to be an Olympian or a businessman. Even as a really, really successful husband, you will, as being a husband, what is what I mean, as in the role and function of a husband, you will stand out like a rose amongst thorns as an individual, because most husbands just aren't. Health and fitness, exactly the same. It doesn't matter what you want to do. And the interesting thing that comes out of that doing stuff on your own is the opportunity to actually rest, being comfortable in your own presence with no noise and nobody else around you. Well, it sounds like the time and place that you rest. And so I think people have got to be very careful with the labels they carry about who they think they are, the accuracy of those labels. And, you know, all the guilt you carry is ultimately forgiven. So if you feel guilty for resting, you'll be forgiven tomorrow. So just go blink and rest.
So immediately this comes up to me, right? One of my favorite pastors and preachers had a medical scare on stage, and immediately there's a lot of speculations that then went on. He got a stroke and all of that. But I went a bit deeper into this, and I wanted to know, why did that have to happen? Because I was questioning God, why did it have to happen on a public platform? Because it is so embarrassing. It is so like, why did we have to have that there? Why couldn't it happen in his private place, you know? But I think the bigger lesson was this, because as I was researching this, there's quite a few opinions, and there's this one guy that had such a beautiful opinion by saying that sometimes we run away and we see stuff that are meant to free us and stuff that are binding us. For instance, tithing and offering. For instance, God saying that we must rest. I mean, if he is God and he rested on the seventh day, who are we to not rest, you know? So we see these, as you mentioned, like hustle. You have to hustle. But that actually is us in bondage than us actually experiencing freedom in resting. And it's important to then have your resting time. And I was so touched by him this Sunday coming back and saying that, hey, this is it, right? I have been too busy. I've been traveling, and every Sunday I stand near the pulpit and I'm delivering a message where I should actually be resting. So if this is anything but a message for you to rest, let it then be. From this big guy who's this big icon of a pastor in the world, what happened to me on stage, if it should serve as a purpose as you taking a rest, please let that be it. And I took it and I immediately applied it. I told my wife that this is what I'm going to do. I'm blocking out already 4 spots in our next year in the calendar that we go away as a family, that I get to rest. I get to not go to work. I get to not do anything, but I get to rest, because it has become such an important thing for me right now, as opposed to the hustle world that we're in right now, which is actually toxic, very toxic.
And we don't know the damage that we're doing to ourselves along
100%.
that way. You know,
100%.
that pastor, there's many other reasons. Maybe he could have had a heart problem in his home, being home on his own, and nobody would have known about it and he passed on. But actually having that happen on stage in front of so many people who could call a paramedic or this, that, the other, you know, God works in great ways. But I do think that you know, I've got a client, Andrew. I just wrote about him this afternoon. Andrew's not his real name, by the way. Andrew's the name in the blog I wrote. But he got some great business coaching advice from a name brand business coach who spent a lot of money with. And the advice he got given was really, really boringly simple, which is work 14 hours a day, 6.5 days a week. Have Sunday afternoons off for the family, press repeat. And he took a 7 million business to 46 million in roughly 2.5 years. So quite a big shift. And he got home one Sunday afternoon to find the house a bit weird and a bit empty, and couldn't quite put his finger on it. And he went upstairs to find every bedroom empty. And his wife had simply had an affair, moved to Cape Town with the kids and gone. Rest isn't just about sleeping. It's actually about allocating time for the other things that are important in your world. Yeah. Wealth without my wife would be a really, really pointless thing. And for this guy, Andrew, he lives up in Joburg. He now every second weekend can't work anymore. He flies Friday afternoon to Cape Town. He pays for an apartment in Cape Town. He's got 2 homes he now runs because he's got divorced from his wife. He lost shares in his business during the divorce. All of that wealth that he generated went because of his inability to actually rest, his inability to be the dad, to be the husband, to rest and actually be present. All of the wealth actually caused a problem for him. And that's where the love of money comes in. When we're pursuing it without seeking a harmony of life in the rest of our life. It will catch us eventually. There is always a more charming, fitter, better looking, wealthier guy than any one of us around. And if we don't show love to our wives, somebody else will. It's just true. And if they're more charming, more caring, more loving, more wealthy, more fit, more everything than we are, your wife might love you at a point in time, but it will crumble eventually unless we actually give input where it's due. So why are you so afraid? Maybe people are afraid of the demon they have inside that knows they struggle to go and put the time into their life where it really matters.
Yeah. Let's go put time in where it matters.